All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today. Today, we're going to be talking about a study we did in 2014 as part of the USDA Transition to Organic Partnership Program, where we were evaluating barriers to organic production. For the study, we did a survey of small-scale and new and beginning farmers across North and South Carolina, and we are excited to share the results with you today. So go ahead to the next slide. So just about a little bit about who's presenting today. I'm Dr. Hannah Dankbar. I'm the local food program manager with NC State Extension. And I'll let Noah introduce herself.
I'm Noah Mizrahi. I recently graduated from state with a master's in environmental sociology, and I've been working with Hannah and Steph's for about 2 years now, and really looking forward to sharing these outcomes with you.
All right, next slide. First, we just want to acknowledge who made this project possible. Again, this project or the study came out of the Southeast Transition to Organic Partnership Program, which is funded by the USDA Agricultural Marketing Service. This has been a multi-year cooperative agreement with Florida organic growers sort of being the cat herder for the Southeast, which we really appreciate their work. And then the specific research question and work on organic transition across the Southeast has been led, can you go back, Noah, by several organizations. I want to give a special acknowledgement to the Center for Environmental Farming Systems, which is a collaboration between NC State, NC State, and our North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, along with NC State Extension, and several other partners across the region, including the Carolina Farm Stewardship Association, Organic Grower School, Central Carolina Community College, NC State Extension, Florida Organic Growers, Georgia Organic Growers, and Clemson's University Organic Certification Program. So thanks to everybody who's participated so far. So just what we're going over today, I'll start with just a brief introduction to the organic certification. I made a note of some of the questions that were submitted with the webinar registration, so I'll try to hit on a few of those during this introduction. And then Noah will walk us through the survey results and a discussion of what we found. And then we'll wrap up with some recommendations and some reminders about resources that are out there. And just as a note, if any questions or comments come up during the webinar, we do have the chat as well as the Q&A open, and we'll be monitoring those. And there will be time at the end for a question and answer session. All right, Noah. So just to start with a little bit about USDA Organic, I assume most folks over here, this label at least is at least somewhat familiar. But just as a little bit of a refresher, USDA Organic is a food label monitored by the USDA National Organic Program that creates a set of standards that producers must meet to have that label. And there are different standards depending on what type of product is being produced. So for example, produce and grains, some of the standards include using things like natural fertilizers, eco-friendly pest control, and protecting soil and water. And then for animal production, there's some standards that relate to allowing animals to roam freely outdoors, animal welfare standards, and not using any growth hormones or antibiotics. And then also packaged goods are able to be certified organic, and these goods aren't allowed to contain GMOs. This certification actually expands outside of the farm gate, where products are traced from farm to store, and things like artificial colors, flavors, or preservatives aren't allowed. And if you're interested in learning more about the organic standards, these are available online at the USDA Organic Protection or Organic National Organic Program, NOP. There we go. All right, next slide, Noah. So just the pillars that the USDA upholds for the organic certification. The standards are protected by law. So this certification, the documentation certifying that producers are following the standards does require a significant amount of paperwork, which is something we'll be talking about in a little bit more detail later. Producers and farms are inspected yearly. by different certification agencies. Clemson Organic Program is one that's large here in the Southeast, and there are several others. Again, products can be traced from farm to store, especially if they're those processed goods. And the national organic standards are shaped by public input. The organic label actually took about 12 years to put together because of the high levels of public input, and then the standards continue to be shaped by public input. And there continues to be opportunities to be part of the National Organic Board. All right, Noah, next slide. So this is just a little bit about the certification process. So a producer or handler will adopt organic practices and start documenting their compliance with the standards. And then after a certain amount of time, depending on which product is being produced, for crop production, it can take about 3 years to transition a farm to organic. Then a certifier will come out to the farm, make sure everything's in compliance and that all standards are being met. And then a producer is able to start using that label. But that's not where the certification process stops. Then a farm is visited each year by an inspector, and that includes the farm being inspected just to make sure the standards are physically being met, as well as the records, making sure that there's documentation that the standards are being met throughout the year. So it is this ongoing process. There are costs involved with that annual inspection, as well as the time for maintaining those records. Although the USDA has shared some results about producers sharing how the record keeping requirements have benefited their business overall. But at the beginning, it can be a bit of a learning curve to find which process works for an individual farm. All right, next slide. So getting into what our study is about, we were interested in exploring the challenges that prevent small-scale farmers in North Carolina and South Carolina from transitioning to certified organic production. We decided to focus on small-scale farmers because we know that this group can be often aligned with organic principles, but can face some unique challenges. And also small-scale farmers are well represented across these 2 states. So our specific research question asks, how do production, market, and certification barriers prevent small-scale farmers in North and South Carolina from transitioning to certified organic production? And then we were also interested in learning about how this group of farmers are able to access and utilize USDA assistance programs that can assist with getting the organic certification. So how we conducted this study was working with the partner organizations who are part of the Southeast TOPP program. We developed this survey with those partners and then distributed the survey through those partner listservs reaching farmers. So now I'll hand it over to Noah to share the results from this work.
Thanks, Hannah. So yes, we have our results broken up here for you into 4 categories. The first results section tells you a little about our participants, an overview of them and who responded to the survey. Next is transitioning to organic barriers. We also have results around resource development, and finally, USDA aid program perception and participation. So for participant overview, it's broken down into 3 subsections, a little bit about our participant demographics, and then their farm characteristics, and finally their market channels. We had a total of 71 people participate in this survey, but they were allowed to answer as many or as few questions as they wanted. Some questions asked them to select all that apply, so that end count is going to vary throughout our visuals and our graphs here. So if you're interested in the numbers, pay attention to that. Also, something to take note of is for legal confidentiality reasons, we were not allowed to report on numbers under than 3. So if you see totals not adding up to 100, it might be because we had to remove stats for confidentiality reasons. And I can give you an example of what that might look like on this next slide here. This table has to do with our participant demographics. Starting at the top, we see that the majority of our farmers, 75% are from North Carolina, and then 24% are from South Carolina. Race and ethnicity, the majority of our respondents, 70% identified as white, followed by 12% identifying as African American or Black, and 9% identifying as Hispanic. In this category, as well as the gender category, you'll see that numbers aren't going to add up to 100. We did have people identify outside of these races and ethnicities and genders, but we couldn't report them. So for gender, the majority of our respondents were female at 56%, and then about a little over a third were male, 37. Majority are not US veterans, but the two demographics I would suggest to pay attention to and keep in mind throughout this presentation is that the majority of our farmers identified themselves as low resource farmers at 97%. And at the time of our survey, I think the USDA was defining a low income farmer as making a threshold under $189,000 for the year. So most of our participants identified as part of this group. And then they also mostly identified almost 70% yes to being a beginning farmer or rancher. So it's important to keep in mind that we're working with some vulnerable populations when we're looking at this data in terms of them being limited resources and new farmers. So this slide here gets a little bit into the farm characteristics. The graph on the left, the bar graph, we had surveyed our participants about their acres and how many of their acres are currently certified or in transition to being certified. And there's two really big takeaways from this graph here. The first being that majority of respondents said they are not operating any acres of land that are certified or currently certified or organic. The next big takeaway is that those that are operating really small scales. We've got the majority after the 0 acres resting in the zero point 0.1 to 4 acres. And just being familiar with the data, I think most of those numbers are actually under 2 in that 1 to 4 range. So majority of our respondents are not certified or participating in the system. However, when you look at the graph on the left, production practices, when we surveyed asking if our participants are using organic practices but are not certified, the majority said yes. 58% said that they are using organic practices but are not certified. So it really raises this question around, it's not a lack of interest that is keeping people from being certified. They're practicing organic, but they're not getting the label. So it raises the question is what is that reason why? For this table here, I won't get into all of the numbers, but we surveyed about sustainable agricultural practices that our participants are currently using, interested in using, or not interested in using. And I just want to hone in on, again, this organic practices. 84% said that they were currently using organic practices, even though the majority of them are not certified organic. And if you're interested in some of these other practices and numbers like crop rotation, seed saving, this chart and the report is available on the CEF's website. So if you want to look a little bit closer at these numbers, it's available to the public there for you. And okay, in terms of farmer produce, I won't spend too much time here. We've got some juicier material to get into. But we've had a variety of producers answer the survey. The majority are growing vegetables, herbs, and fruits. On the lesser side, hay and grain row crops. So in terms of primary market outlets, they could select all that apply. So we had a total of 89 responses here. And the majority being 26% are selling in farmers markets and 24 at other direct-to-consumer markets. What we're seeing here is, that certification, the participant overview data here is suggesting that certification might not be necessary in these markets, that they can directly inform customers without being organically certified or going through a bureaucratic process. And the data moving forward will kind of continue to show this idea as well. So moving on to our next set of results, we surveyed about barriers in transitioning to organic production, and we broke it up into 3 phases of the transition process, the certification phase, the production phase, and the market phase. So we're going to break down the barriers for you within each of those categories. So first, we asked about certification barriers. We got a total of 161 responses. They could select all that apply. And the number one barrier cited was the initial cost of certification at 17%, followed by the cost of annual inspections, also at 17%. I think there was a one count difference between the initial cost of certification and annual cost. They look like the same number because we rounded up the decimal. But so what we're seeing here is that about 1/3 of our data has to do with an affordability issue. And it's kind of suggesting that transitioning to organic production requires a lot of upfront and reoccurring costs that might be deterring participation. Another huge portion of this data went to general record keeping at 17%. Other administrative barriers like managing an organic system plans was also cited at 10%. Lack of knowledge and information about certification process came in as another mid-tier barrier. So what we're seeing here is that the certification process is requiring a lot of physical and cognitive labor that are deterring participants from engaging. On the lesser side here, we had concerns about government oversight and lack of nearby organic certifying agencies, but I do want to get into some of the other short answer responses that we got on the next slide. So in the other, they were allowed to give a written response about what the certification barrier might be, and we were able to pull some themes from these written responses. The first being philosophical objectives. We had one respondent say, it's not about the product, it's about the organic industry. Hinting at some sort of, maybe philosophical, ethical misalignment in terms of the industry, not the practice. Then we had someone say, what's the point of being certified? Customers identify with farm and farmers, so trust is built and organic is not as important. So kind of this idea that in a direct-to-consumer market, they're not going to always need a certification if they can validate their growing processes directly with their consumers themselves. So yeah, showing here that direct-to-consumer markets aren't engaging as much because they can sell their product or validate their process face to face. The middle theme here has to do with misalignment of certification. We had one person say that the system of organic enforcement is very burdensome for a small 100% organic farm. They mention limited sourcing and that one of their sources can no longer be a source for them because they have no handler certificate. So one barrier here is not only do they need to be certified, but everyone around them needs to be certified. All their input and output markets need to accesses need to be certified as well. And for a small resource farmer, working in local systems that could create a lot of barriers in terms of how they're running their business. Finally, inconsistencies in the process was a big theme that came out. National organic program rules are being misinterpreted than they were originally intended for, with no oversights or checks. Hearing a lot about private inspectors having different rules and systems. And then again, reiterated here, different inspectors have different standards and requirements. So what this is telling us a bit here is that, when there's inconsistencies in the process, it invalidates the process itself and discourages farmers from, wanting to engage with these rules if they're not clear. Moving on to the next phase of the transition process, which is production. We had 76 responses to these barriers here, with 24% being the highest at lack of allowable inputs from local suppliers. So this is again suggesting that organic production is creating a supply chain, an external supply chain that producers have to rely on, even if it's expensive or inaccessible. We had a lot of other short answer responses I'll get into onto the next slide. Loss of flexibility with respect to pest and disease treatments also was a big barrier here at 16%. Kind of suggesting that there's a loss of flexibility. The requirements might be a little bit too rigid. Another mid-tier barrier at 14% was lack of organic farmers in my area to connect with. So, peer learning is often really critical role in fostering knowledge exchange, and especially during times of resiliency. So it's critical to keep in mind a lack of peer support as well. Now, some of those short answer responses here, we pulled some quotes for you, and as well as some themes from those written responses. On the right side, we had a lot of quotes about resource inadequacy. And you'll see that included stuff like organic slaughter, lack of access to equipment, or good affordable leaf compost. The middle theme here was labor shortages, increased labor requirements at a time when good farm labor is very hard to come by. Here we're seeing that issues within the conventional agricultural systems are translating into all other tiers of agricultural production. This is a common issue in our literature, and it's definitely being seen in the organic systems as well. And lastly, the theme from the production short answer responses was another issue with a policy misalignment or disconnect with reality. We had someone say it's difficult to grow organic in our climate, and we're amongst another person said we were amongst the first to be certified organic in North Carolina, but over the years they didn't need the certification, so they dropped the money and time required to maintain it, even though they are still growing organically. So what we can interpret here is that the time and money labor that goes into the certification process is not applicable to a small scale producer. They can't keep up with those time and labor requirements. And now lastly, we've got our market barriers. We had a total of 61 people, 61 responses to this question, and the highest barrier being access to markets with enough demand at 33%. So this has to do a lot with output access. Our farmers reaching sale channels that can provide enough consistent support and demand for to maintain organic production. And here we're seeing that our farmers are saying no. Market benefits to organic products to consumers or buyers came in next at 30%. So this has to do with social access and whether or not their buyers are recognizing the value in an organic label. Here, our farmers are saying that there might be limited awareness about the ethical and health advantages of buying an organic produce with a label. Um, and one of the issues with that has to do with the next barrier here, not being able to charge a premium for certified organic, which 25% selected this as a barrier. So if people aren't recognizing the value in an organic label, then they're also not going to recognize the price increases. So those who are certified are now saying that they're not getting a return of investment that might, subsidize all of the economic um, investments that they had to put into upfront in the certification process. So now we've got other open-ended responses here. And I'll start with the perceived devaluation. We had on one side farmers say that most other farmers at our market claim to be using organic practices. Some even claim that their produce is organic orally, of course. So the consumer doesn't see the value in our certification. We are the only organic farm at our market, but we cannot charge a premium and have some difficulty making organic certification a differentiator. So, if consumers fail to recognize the organic benefits, they're not going to recognize the added value. And in this case, within the farming community itself, if a farmer has been able to build trust with a buyer, then they don't see the need for certification. And so those who are charging more no longer seem reasonably priced. And I want to jump over to this side here, return of investments. This first quote says, return of investments for organic versus conventional, they're getting premium prices already on produce. And I wanted to jump over to that one because I think these two farmers, these quotes are speaking to each other here. And for me, as a sociologist, I think it's really analytically insightful because it raises the question of how do we respond or fix this problem while, considering both parties. On one hand, the perceived evaluation might suggest, an education initiative, a marketing campaign that might, get consumers to understand the real value and the health and ethical benefits of buying organic produce. But on the other end, we have someone who's saying, there's real structural issues that are, kind of making it so that this system doesn't fit my realities. So if we're going to push their consumers into thinking that this label is more valuable than their farmers' direct validation processes, then we might risk harming the non-certified producers. And we would just want to keep that in mind moving forward. How do we respond to this conflict within our farmers markets themselves without, harming one or the other? So our next section gets into oh, I almost skipped a few quotes here. The other quote about under return investment has more to do with global markets rather than direct to consumer markets. We had someone say that foreign competition from imported products, organic is now heading down the same path as conventional grains. They have to compete with foreign products with little oversight and different labor and transportation standards. So this is an issue as well outside of our direct-to-consumer markets, more global structures here. They're identifying as barriers as well. And then trust and transparency, the organic market is misleading. This has been a consistent theme throughout our open-ended responses, this philosophical misalignment here. So now getting into resource development. We asked participants what educational resources are necessary for organic production, and we had a total of 94 responses. They could select all that apply. The majority here selected that educational resources around pest management at 20%, suggesting a need for, more tailored resources that might be more regionally based, and not as more and less general and more, general recommendations and suggestions instead of providing more generic tailored resources. The cost differences between conventional organic production came in at 17%, kind of highlighting a reoccurring theme here in organic production debates that, while the organic market promises long-term financial rewards, the short-term costs prohibit many from participating. Soil health management also came in at 17%. This is a really knowledge and intensive process that requires farmers to think about crops, rotations, cover crops, input uses, and they are, saying here clear they need assistance with that. Some other questions we asked about educational development, and resource development was their preferred resources, training resources structure. So most selected webinars and online resources. And then similarly, a question asking what is your primary source of information? The number one source you use, 53% said internet. So hopefully this webinar is taking that into consideration. And then lastly, we have results around our USDA aid programs. So we surveyed about 7 different USDA aid programs: the Environmental Quality Incentive Programs, the Conservative Steward and Reserve Program, the Organic Certification Cost Share Program, non-insured crop disaster assisted program, microloans, and whole farm revenue protection. So this next graph here combines all those, and we asked our participants, have you applied to any of these programs? And what really stands out here, what's really jarring, is that the majority said no. We've seen throughout these results that our participants in the survey are expressing financial, technical, and administrative support, and these programs can offer that, but they're not participating, which raises questions on how we can change that. So for EQIP, only 36% of the respondents applied, and that was the majority here. That was the program which had the most applicants. WFRP at the end, what could explain that was at the time when we surveyed, that was a really new program, so that could explain why less applicants there. So I just want to note that this graph summarizes a long series of questions. After we asked participants if they had applied to a program, we followed up by saying, did you receive funding? Was the financial aid helpful, and was the technical support helpful? Because so few people had applied, we had to combine the questions for each individual program into a collective response here, which is why the end count jumped so high. You'll see numbers like 207. But in doing this, we were able to see some emerging themes. So out of the 207 responses, only 32 people had applied to a program. But within that 13%, 66 said that they did receive funding. So this is really great to see that about two-thirds who are applying are getting the financial support that they needed. And within that 66%, 86% said that the financial aid was helpful, and 33% said that the technical support was helpful. So on the technical side, we have the majority saying that wasn't helpful, but the financial aid does seem to be really supporting our farmers when they do engage with these programs. When we asked why you didn't apply, 65% said that they were not familiar with the program. This was the biggest reason why they weren't interacting. But we also had some short answers saying that things like FSA is predatory in lending. There's lots of sketchy providers that burn growers. So again, this idea that there might be philosophical misalignment between our growers and our institutions. There's a lot of responses said that I don't want it. I don't want to take on loan obligations. They don't do loans. They save till they can afford. Um, and again, OCCSP, they said our markets don't need required certification. So the crop share program, might not be as necessary for them. So, key takeaways here. Our survey represents a really small group of mostly direct to consumer buyers who are new and beginning farmers. Most of them are identifying as organic growers, even without the official certification label. And another big key takeaway is that there's significant financial and market access barriers to the organic supply chains. And there's a need for flexible sourcing. Output, social and economic market access, and money support, financial support. Another big key takeaway is that we're seeing organic production is not applicable to the realities of our small scale farmers, and farmers are responding to this through a social adaptation strategy, such as focusing on trust over a bureaucratic form of validation. And then lastly, USDA programs have low application rates. Awareness and familiarity could help address these. And I'm going to hand it back over to Hannah here.
Yeah, so I know that was a lot of information to take in. I did put a link to the PDF of the survey results and the Q&A. So if folks are interested in taking a look at that, that's available online. And we'll be sure to send out the recording to this webinar as well as that PDF after we wrap up today. So if folks are interested in taking a deeper dive, that's an option. We are also taking these results. There's a lot that we can act on and sort of lift up both to technical service agencies as well as to the USDA themselves. So we're looking, we've been giving public presentations and have shared this report with our funder. So yeah, you want to go to the next slide? So getting into those specific recommendations for technical service providers, and I'm including USDA, extension, nonprofits, anybody who's working directly with farmers, specifically the audience for this study, small scale producers. From the study, we've seen that small scale producers face unique challenges and that programs and resources designed for all farmers may not meet the unique needs for small farmers. So as an educator myself, this survey gave me some insights into how to design educational opportunities specific for small farmers. Some things that came out specifically was thinking about how to share information about USDA financial resources online and through extension that targets small farmers, specifically detailing how those programs could benefit operations of those sizes. And then also thinking about how to connect organizations serving these audiences. Small scale farmers, since it's somebody I work with, I feel like they're pretty mainstream, but a lot of agricultural programs may not be designed to meet the unique needs of this group. So how can we build this network to promote learning across peers and across organizations as well? I think that there's some opportunities to do some innovation. One thing that's come out of the Southeast TOPP program is that as long as the program's running, there's an organic mentorship opportunity that we've had up and running. The Carolina Farm Stewardship Association has been facilitating that program. And then we've been able to integrate some of those opportunities into the CEF's registered apprenticeship program. Some other recommendations, I think that there are some opportunities for connecting farmers with resources. I think we're going to see some changes in this. One thing that came up over the past, I guess it's been a couple weeks now, the announcement about the pilot for the regenerative agriculture program that's going to streamline the application for some of the conservation programs that could provide funding for farmers and will only require one application to apply to multiple programs. So we are seeing some innovations come. Time will tell how they target and benefit the specific audience. But I do think that that is a way to reduce administrative barriers. And then I think just as a food system professional, I think that there's opportunities to explore how to bridge direct to consumer and wholesale market channels. We typically see farmers start in direct to consumer markets, such as farmers markets or CSAs, as they start their business to sort of build that customer base and get their feet under them. And then as they continue to grow, find what they enjoy and what sells well, that's when some of the wholesale market channels become appealing. So are there opportunities or when figuring out when organic certification makes sense as a farm grows, I think is an important piece for technical service providers to be sort of in tune with and know when to make the recommendations for when the cost and time of an organic certification could be worth it. Next slide. So I just want to highlight some USDA resources. We asked about a specific set of them in our survey. I really like this graphic from USDA because it helps sort of point you in the direction of where to go to for specific needs. So we've talked a lot about the National Organic Program as far as the organic standards, getting information about that. We've talked about some different financial opportunities. That's the Farm Service Agency who helps with those. There is a federal organic certification cost share assistance program, and then some states do have also state level organic certification cost share assistance programs. The Farm Service Agency can provide some information about that. And then not to get into too much detail about this, but again, like NRCS and FSA could provide conservation resources. And again, that application is changing potentially with this new pilot program. And then as farmers are accessing things like farm loans, crop insurance, business loans, asking for high tunnels, talking to Farm Service Agency, with the Risk Management Agency, Rural Development. There are multiple USDA agencies that have either loans or grants that can support organic production. And then for market promotion, the Agricultural Marketing Service branch of the USDA. And then if you want a more local level technical assistance, Extension can be a great partner for that type of development, as well as local level nonprofits. But just know that it is multiple branches of the USDA that have resources or information for supporting organic certification. We can go to the next slide. And again, this project was possible from the organic transition to organic partnership program. I think most folks here are based in the Southeast. So Florida organic growers sort of coordinate the Southeast region. If you are from outside of the Southeast, there are 5 other regions that are also implementing this program. And each region gets to sort of dictate how their program develops. So there may be different resources developed in different regions, which I think is a big asset, because that was something we heard in the survey results, was that producing organically in the Southeast can be difficult. So we're able to focus on those specific needs. And then the other regions are obviously free to do that as well. So I just want to, again, iterate some appreciation for this program and acknowledge that there are a wealth of resources out there from this program. Next slide. That is all the information that we have to share today. We wanted to make sure to leave plenty of time for any questions or anything that came up. I did answer a few in the Q&A, but feel free to add any questions or comments in that question and answer box. And if you're on your computer, that's on the sort of bottom bar. All right, we have one question that came in regarding the certification misalignment slides. Did they come from people that have been certified in the past, never been certified before, or some of each? Noah, do you feel?
Yeah, that was coming from some of each. We had some producers saying that they weren't interested because of the misalignment, and then some producers saying that they were certified but actually dropped the certification and are still practicing organic without it. I hope that answered the question. Sorry,
And I did, oh, sorry.
see the chat while sharing.
All right, any other questions? Let's see, how will we obtain a slide deck for this presentation? We will send out an email to everybody who registered for this webinar, and we will include a recording, the slide deck, as well as the PDF of the survey responses. Another thing, for technical assistance and resources, have you seen the bridge between USDA and nonprofits improve for organic? I do think that this transition to organic partnership program, I think it's pretty innovative for the USDA and does help sort of bridge those relationships. They're cooperative agreements, they weren't competitive grants. So the USDA had this pot of money and knew that an equal amount was going to go to each region in the country. And then reached out with some initial invitations and then sort of did like a snowball to get big like nonprofits who are working in this area, both big and small organizations, sorry for that wording, to be part of this program. And a lot of the funding is for that outreach and for any educational programs or projects or resource development to assist farmers with transitioning to organic. So I do think it's really exciting. I think, yeah, it's a way to grow, and I'm excited to see what comes next. All right, another question. Do you think that there are things we can do to push policy or markets so the USDA organic regains philosophical alignment with our small farmers? I do think that folks are interested in food transparency. So I do think the USDA organic certification is a certification that people trust. So at the beginning of this presentation, we shared those 4 pillars that the USDA upholds as part of the certification. One being publicly informed or formed, and then also being enforced by law. So I think that graphic could be a really great thing to share. And if that's something that you're interested in using, the USDA has actually taken that graphic and made it available in a bunch of different formats. So you can easily make a banner or social media graphics or different types of outputs that you can add to your own marketing toolbox and make those available for consumers to help make that push. Because I do think it is this building the relationship and trust between with consumers to recognize the label, which I think a lot of folks do. It's pretty clear, but also informing them about what it stands behind it, which may not be as clear or as widely known. So I think sharing those 4 pillars could be a really easy, practical first step. And then I think just that ongoing education too, both with producers, really across the supply chain and with consumers. I don't think a lot of folks know the history of the organic certification and how long it took to put together and all the enforcement behind it. So I think sharing the story and as compelling of a way as possible can really help regain that philosophical alignment. And I'd love to see other creative approaches to that too. So would love to like do some group think around this at some point. All right, any other questions? All right. Will there be any working group work on this for the group think? I would be very interested in that. If you want to shoot me an email, we are going into year 4 of the Southeast TOPP program. So we are going to have more deliverables, a few more events happening. So I'd love to incorporate this into our work plan for the next year. So yes, if that's something you're interested in continuing to talk about, I believe the follow-up email will come from my email address. So feel free to respond to that, and we'll see what we can come up with. Right. A question, will we have the recording? Yes, we'll be following up with an email with recording, slide deck, and PDF of the survey results. All right, I'm not seeing any new questions come through, so we can go ahead and wrap up. I really appreciate y'all taking the time to join us today. I hope you learned something new, and keep an eye on your inbox for the follow-up materials. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.